Certainly, as professional coaches and administrators and educators in sport for the disabled, we're very deeply committed to promoting athleticism within the sport of wheelchair basketball. And collectively, we recognize that an athlete is someone who desires to achieve his or her potential in a sport. And I think that we are very sincerely hoping that the outcome of this effort will be that it will provide a vehicle for individuals who want to be athletes in the sport of wheelchair basketball and who really want to achieve their potential to do so.
And I think one of the keys in promoting that is development in terms of fundamental techniques, fundamental knowledge, both individually and then collectively as a team, and then somewhat, I guess, globally, that all of wheelchair basketball might also be enhanced through that type of development.
I think another area that I think is real important, I think we all share this, is that we're really trying to teach players how to play the game. It's not so much learning a number of set plays or understanding the X's and O's, but really understanding what to do and when to do it and why you're doing it.
This project reflects a coaching style which emphasizes behavioral orientation in coaching as opposed to an outcome orientation. I feel that outcome-oriented players and coaches are a bit too prevalent in the sport, in that we don't really concern ourselves with how a person gets to a certain point so long as the outcome was good. And the problem is that if they're fundamentally unsound in getting to this outcome, it's very likely that the outcome was a function of luck or of something that was uncontrolled by the athlete. And so we emphasize doing it correctly, and we'll let the outcome take care of itself. If a person needs to, when an athlete needs to learn to have, an athlete needs to acquire a left-hand shot on the left-hand side of the basket. Subsequently, we won't let them skirt that. We'll force them to develop that left-hand shot on the left-hand side and take the emphasis off whether it goes in or misses. Because ultimately, we know that if they're fundamentally sound with this orientation, the overall impact will be positive, and it will ultimately help them achieve a higher level of play.
Yeah, I think that has some direct application in our own areas as collegiate coaches, because the kind of players we get have minimal experience, and the skills that are there are not well developed yet. And taking a behavioral orientation to our coaching and teaching allows us to develop our players, I think, much more adequately than basing all of our success on a win-loss type of record. That does not mean that we are not interested in the winning and losing aspect of wheelchair basketball. That has tremendous importance in all of our programs. But in terms of our daily practices and evaluating games, understanding how well we played or how well we practiced is something we really try to impart in our players.
I think that probably is summarized in the old adage, if you don't plan where you're going, you're probably going to wind up someplace else. And I guess what we're attempting to do is to provide that vehicle, provide a modality where we've analyzed the game. I don't think we're trying to promote in terms of that this is godlike. We all continue to share, we all continue to learn, but that there has to be a genesis. There has to be a basic resource of knowledge, and that this has been one of the areas that we have seen that there's a deficit. So practice then becomes so very, very important to what it is we're doing. We need to emphasize what that means in terms of, and I think that's what we're attempting to do.
When you talk about the importance of practice, I think we have to note that we, as collegiate coaches, again, have the luxury of being able to practice 5 times a week. And we're able to develop skills probably more quickly that way and understanding the strategies of the game. And we understand that with community-based teams, that practice time is often less available. And I think then your practices even become more important because you're only getting together 2 to 4, maybe 5 hours a week, and you really have to make your practices organized. You have to be ready with a plan. And on the community level, that's so much more important.
That's true. Planning and a goal orientation on behalf of the individuals on the team and the team as a unit. Too often there's controversy in basketball teams. Of course, it's easy to not have controversy in individual sports, but in basketball we have a collection of individuals. Oftentimes at the community level, it's a myriad of interests and abilities. And the teams have to collectively analyze what the individual and team goals are based on the individual goals and come up with a set of team goals that they can then use to direct the practices and to set up the competitive schedules and to make it to give them an opportunity to experience success in relation to their goals.
And I think, though, an important concept of that is that as people practice, they have to understand that a chaotic practice or a chaotic skill development process is going to produce a chaotic ball game or a chaotic type of individual. So there was the saying that, practice makes perfect. I think we have to modify that a bit. I think we have to say that practice makes permanent. Perfect practice makes perfect. And so if we allow our scrimmages, if we allow our practices, if we allow our individual workouts to be chaotic, to not be skilled, to not be fundamentally sound, then one learns that skill predicated on that process. And I think what we're seeing is in wheelchair basketball for a period of years, this is how many of the players or some of the players have developed. They've developed on their own. And they've developed well in terms of that particular component. But now we find that when they learned it, it became permanent. And now we're trying to suggest that there's an appropriateness to that. And it's going to be very difficult for some of these kinds of players that have been playing 5, 10, 15 years that have developed these patterns. And so therefore now they're going to have to work harder. They're going to have to reevaluate, they're going to have to retrain, and that's going to be very, very difficult. And I think we really understand that. We're educators, we're teachers, and we understand that when something is learned and it's become permanent, that to unlearn it, to retrain, is very, very difficult. So this is not something that's going to happen in a day, in a month, in a year, maybe even in 2 or 3 years. It's something that's going to take a great deal of dedication, and it's going to take an effort on their part.
And I think we're addressing the quality there, and I think you have to understand too that it's necessary to look at your development in terms of your commitment year-round. And we're seeing that in order to really enhance your skills individually or as a team, that if you can get together as often as possible, your improvement will be much more dramatic and much greater. And I think we're seeing wheelchair basketball, the skills there and the team play improving year to year. And I think that's because there are certain individuals and certain teams who spend time outside of the basketball calendar playing and practicing and refining and working on their development. And so that commitment now is almost year-round, and you have to start looking at that in terms of your own development and your team's development.
I think probably we'll all agree that the favorite saying of all community teams is the let's scrimmage kind of perspective on practice. And it ties in very well with Lou's statement on practice making permanent. And I think the problem with scrimmages is twofold. One, the people that are playing and the coaches that are directing the scrimmages oftentimes simply have never been taught or have never had an opportunity to access media to be taught how to structure a practice or what are the proper fundamentals of the sport. It's not that they're not eager to learn that and introduce it and implement it in their practices. They're merely naive as to how that should be done. And of course, the practice session that emphasizes scrimmage just introduces too many concepts to the players for them to be able to grasp any one of them and appropriately assimilate it into his or her game. We, of course, would like to see our practices run more with drills, which can break the fundamental parts of the game down into individual units and teach these very specifically. It's very difficult sometimes to understand just generally when someone says set a pick, what that pick involves. There are many, many components that have to be done appropriately for a successful pick to be performed. And so we're advocating that they learn to teach these skills from a very specific mode and then ultimately generalizing to broader and broader levels of understanding in a sort of a whole concept of teaching. And I think introducing this to wheelchair basketball instruction is going to elevate the overall level of play and understanding in the sport.
Yeah, I think the other negative aspect of just a scrimmage philosophy, and Brad, you mentioned the chaotic nature of, overwhelming nature of responsibilities, in terms of just scrimmaging. But when you think about it, you look at scrimmaging, you have one ball and 10 people, and I would think that if you put a clock on the ball handling skills and the times you handle the ball, that would be minimized. And after all, once you know how to do a skill, to develop that skill is just repetition, repetition, repetition. And that is minimized in a scrimmage situation. You may only handle the ball 10 or 15 times. And if that's all the time you have to handle the ball and develop your skills, well then I don't think those skills will be enhanced as well as if you'd use some drills and some situations to enhance overall development.
So in essence, what we're saying is this is an effort on our part to produce some sort of media, some sort of resource bank that teaches the how and the why, and in essence, how to read and how to react in game-like situations.